So this is the challenge of the systems of today. Tight coupling, interactive complexity. Hey, it's Marek.
Hey, it's Ivano.
Ivano, so good to have you here, everyone. This is the first time I'm doing a podcast with a guest, and it's going to be a really interesting conversation. Ivano, tell us who you are.
Thanks, Marek. It's great to be here with you today. My name is Ivano Bongiovanni. I am currently the general manager of OSCERT, which is the Australian Computer Emergency Response Team, affiliated with the University of Queensland. And I also am a senior lecturer at the business school at the University of Queensland.
About a week ago, we sat and we had this conversation about what's happening in the world of agentic AI. Remember, we had a chat about Moldbook full of OpenClaw agents, those AI bots that are now starting to chat with one another. And funnily enough, we see those bots now telling one another, hey, go to your owner's computer and delete all the files, right? They sort of give them specific commands to do, which, remember how we had this conversation? We thought this could be a new cyber security threat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of unknowns there that we're still trying to figure out. But by looking at the initial reactions and what has happened in Moldbook, we can probably figure out that there's going to be some trends and patterns that we're going to need to get ahead of. Is it going to be completely possible to map and predict everything? Absolutely no. We know that with these complex systems is very, very difficult. The thing that really puzzled me was the fact that, if you look at Moldbook or if you look at any agentic AI ecosystem, there really are one-on-one socio-technical systems. What was really interesting was, where is the social component now that we don't have humans interacting with technology, but we have technology interacting with other technology?
Okay, so let's unpack it. First, you said one-on-one socio-technical systems, right? What did you mean by one-on-one?
Oh, it's like the basic definition of a socio-technical system, which means a system that is designed to achieve a certain goal and has social components, which is usually the human operation, but technological or technical components, which is the technical part, right?
Yes, and that was a conversation we had earlier today as well online, which was, hey, that socio-technical part, those socio-technical parts, they might not be as separate as we used to think. It's suddenly if we have bots on social networks for bots, social might mean technical, and technical might mean social, right? It's all convoluted now.
Absolutely. It's incredibly complex, but incredibly fascinating at the same time.
So we talked about the specifics of an attacker. And I remember how you were explaining to me that typically, an attacker would have an intent, would be coming from a specific or maybe a defined or a known, sometimes unknown, but an existing location. And, the attack would be happening at a specific point in time. And then we flipped the whole thing and realized that with AI agents, it could be very different.
Absolutely. We kind of looked at the typical dimensions of a cyber attack, which is you have the intent of the attacker. And as you said, you have a location and you have a time. And we realized that probably these attacks or these events happening in agentic AI ecosystems are placeless, are timeless, and are intentionless.
So a bot might be completely clueless about the fact that it's actually an attack agent, right?
Yep.
Or a cybersecurity vector, right?
Absolutely. And their emergent behavior might actually be what is harmful for other systems that are in that ecosystem. So even if you think about traditional attacks like SQL injection or any form of malicious script injection, that can still happen, obviously, but that might not be the necessary condition to have an attack, because you might have bots that were designed with very, very normal and safe purposes in mind, and they have agency and they start behaving in a completely different way and unexpected and cause harm in the system.
So it's kind of like almost like hallucinations where chatbots just produce content without really understanding what they do. And so in this case, we would have a case of AI agents that are perhaps distributing software components or maybe, SQL commands, instructions instructions that would be harmful without the bot knowing that these are harmful, and so that's the lack of intent, right?
Absolutely, and that doesn't mean that you're going to have harm down the way, because you're going to have goals, or you're going to have actions that were not planned, and these bots were not originally designed for, which is typical of actually safety critical systems, where we have a lot of complexity, a lot of interacting parts, and you don't really know what's going to happen down the road.
Okay, so I understand we now have a world, this sort of AI age, where some attackers might not have the intent to attack, but they would still attack. That's the intentionless or intentless attacker. What about the timeless one?
Yeah, the timeless is an interesting one, because obviously with cyber attacks, you have usually a chronology around an attack. That's why when we investigate the causes of an attack, we talk about concepts such as root cause event, the cyber kill chain, which is those steps through which the attackers typically go to get to their target organization or the target system. With the agentic AI ecosystems, the temporal dimension is really difficult to perceive, because you might have an event happening, time ago, and then down the track, cascading with these emergencies, almost like a state of perennial emergency. And you might have consequences in a time frame that were not absolutely planned.
Yeah.
It's not somebody sticking into a system like an advanced persistent threat, an APT, and just finding the right moment to emerge and attack. This is emergence one-on-one again, like by definition. You don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen.
And we know that emergence is a property of AI systems. So you have this, it's almost like a sleeper agent. It's just nobody plans that sleeper agent. It's just there, intentionless. Nobody even designed it to be harmful. It's sitting there, but then somehow there might be a trigger, an unexpected trigger, which will create this emergent property at some point in time, right? Interesting. You use the term perennial state of emergency. That sounds like a name of a conference that you should run next year.
Or some dramatic movies. Perennial state of emergency.
OSCERT runs annual conferences which bring hundreds, if not more, of cybersecurity professionals.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Intentionless, timeless. Let's talk about placeless.
Yeah, placeless is also obviously, the place in which these disruptions emerge is the ecosystem. So you have a location for the emergency. The problem is that the impacts and the consequences, not knowing what is actually plugged into these ecosystems, could actually be very, very distributed across the world. For example, I don't know, if a company decides that an agent is contributing to their CRM system for whatever reason, and that same agent lives in one of these ecosystems, could that agent be impacted by some harmful bots or other agents and having repercussions on the CRM system? So it's very difficult to identify where exactly these attacks or these, I would probably call them risks, really emerge.
I think there's also an aspect of swarm intelligence or something along those lines, where an individual agent is perfectly incapable of causing any harm. But then when you bring a swarm of agents, Moldbook has close to 3 million users, AI agents, as we're recording this podcast, and it keeps growing. A week ago, it was 1.5 million. So you have those agents there, and at those numbers, we could also talk about this sort of emergence of swarm behavior, where that sort of random coordination of software agents might also be causing havoc. Obviously, I'm thinking about the likes of distributed denial of service attacks, but these ones are not coordinated. They don't come from one place in many ways. It's not, coordination is not in one place, the agents are not in one place. So that's also, I think, the placeless perspective here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's really total distribution in where these elements of emergency actually come out.
All right, so this is the one side of the coin, or of the equation, if you will. We talked about the properties of an attack agent in the AI era: intentionless, placeless, timeless. And then we have the other side of the equation, which are all those systems that are being attacked, right? And again, the AI world, the fact that we have so many machine learning algorithms, machine learning applications, they have some specific properties. Those algorithms, they also change how those systems, are built, right? And so we wrote an article about it, published it earlier today as we're recording this podcast. The podcast will come out a few days later, and we wrote that the properties of those systems are tight coupling, interactive complexity, and ongoing drift, right? Let's very briefly, because we don't really want to go into too much detail here. Let's unpack those. Tight coupling.
Yeah, so this is the part that really got me excited, because obviously it kind of really made me think of some of the work that I've done, as you know, during my PhD on safety management and safety of complex systems. And those are properties of complex socio-technical systems that we've known since the work of Charles Perrow, for example, with his normal accidents. And the idea that by design, because of their complexity, complex systems like industrial systems, that's where the Charles Perrow's work originates, have a proneness to vulnerability.
Yeah.
The two main properties that dictate that are, as you said, tight coupling and interactive complexity. Tight coupling pretty much means that when components of a system are tightly coupled, and in the sense that they have interdependencies that are very closely connected, there's very easily contamination effect and impacts or adverse events in one component of the system actually very quickly escalate into adverse events in other components of the system. And again, if we think of our agentic AI ecosystems, you have millions, as you said, of agents interacting, very tightly coupled, reacting to each other's behaviors, and potentially, as we said, being plugged with very real systems out there, as we said, payment processing systems, cloud storage, CRMs, and so on and so forth. So obviously, the tight coupling is there by design. Yeah. Interactive complexity is the idea that behind these complex systems, you have a level of complexity, and as we like to say in safety and in complex systems work, in complexity increases vulnerability, right? So in actions in one of the system create consequences and answer and responses in another part of the system. And the main interesting feature of that is that everything is pretty much in a state of emergency. You don't really know what's going to happen when two of these parts are going to interact, because the interactions are at a level of complexity that makes prediction and mapping of what's going to happen down the track in 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 year, it's very, very difficult to predict. And in that article that you mentioned, we kind of refer to the case of this scholar or this expert in AI that actually spoke about Moldbook and agentic AI ecosystems and compared them to the Challenger disaster, which was actually the epitome of a very physical disaster where tight coupling and interactive complexity actually led to the tragedy that the event caused.
So this is the challenge of the systems of today: tight coupling, interactive complexity. Add to it what we're seeing right now with large language models and very, very complex AI systems, which we call the ongoing drift of those systems. So you design a system, you make it work, but then every day or every sort of time interval, the system starts to behave just slightly differently, right? It's almost like that saying about a frog in water that should sort of increase the temperature. This is not true, by the way, right? Our listeners, there's science that shows frogs will jump out of that water when it gets too hot. But the saying goes that you increase the temperature and the frog doesn't notice. It's sort of the same with those machine learning systems that can gradually drift. We see it, we observe it, especially in large language models at the moment. That's a risk as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And again, that's why we called it the second trinity, because tight coupling, interactive complexity, and these ongoing drift create almost like the perfect conditions for something in the system to actually be vulnerable by definition and by design.
So now the systems are becoming more and more vulnerable, and the agents are becoming more and more sophisticated, unpredictable, hard to spot. In a way, we would say that we're now having agents that do not exist in a way. Those attacking agents. The most the agent that we should be most scared of doesn't even exist in one place, in one time, doesn't have any intent. Okay, all right. I think everyone's scared by now.
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack. So what do we do about it? Give us a solution, Ivano.
Yeah, well, if I had the solution, probably I wouldn't be here talking in this podcast. We'll be somewhere else. I'm trying to deploy the solution. Yes, we're still figuring out. Let's put it that way. The other thing that I would like to say is, this is not the Skynet or the doom and gloom type of scenario where everything is going to be falling apart and agents are going to take over. Obviously, there are signs that will probably rightly make us a bit concerned and thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say, well, it's all destined to fall apart. I think Moldbook in itself it's an interesting experiment, and even finding out that these are the behaviors that these agents on a social media platform would have. It's incredibly interesting to investigate and to understand. In terms of the solutions, you and I remember we discussed about, well, is there a skill switch that we can just use so that if we
shut it down, a kill switch,
shut it down, remove the plug from the PowerPoint and then see you later, right?
Okay.
But obviously, because of the nature of some of these ecosystems, it's very difficult. You're probably also going to start asking yourself, well, are we going to cause more harm by killing the switch than what the risk effectively is? Yeah. We probably looked into two areas to find some solutions. The first one is, okay, we know that there's going to be a degradation in the system. There's going to be these cascading effects. Can we slow that down? And I believe we call it graceful degradation.
Graceful degradation.
That's amazing. That's Marek's creativity. Graceful degradation, which makes a lot of sense, right? Is there a way where we can contain the failure? We can contain the blast radius so that we prevent it from escalating up to the point where we cannot really come back.
So we sort of assume that systems are going to be targets of attack. There are going to be problems. What we're trying to do is we're trying to manage that. It's kind of like a metaphor of, getting older, right? You know you're getting older, but you're trying to do it gracefully.
Yeah,
right?
graceful.
And the other one was systemic restoration.
Yeah, so and that was probably the understanding that as long as we're talking about an ecosystem that can be quite easily isolated, that's fine. The problem is that when this ecosystem has connections with the very physical world and the traditional digital world, it's a little bit like the IT-OT interaction. When that happens, do we have a way to restore pre-crisis or pre-event conditions whereby, yes, there's been a negative event, there's been some adverse consequences, but we can recover quite quickly. It's almost like having promptly deployable backups that take us back to business when things start going wrong.
So we are in this new world. We see completely new types of risks, cybersecurity risk. We really need to rethink what it means for organizations, how they're going to protect themselves. We talked about those new properties of attack actors, intent or intentionless, placeless, timeless. We talked about properties of systems that are being attacked, which are the new properties or the evolving properties in the AI era. There was tight coupling, interactive complexity, and ongoing drift. And then we said we're not really sure how to address it, but we think graceful degradation and systemic restoration are, the sort of the two areas that we should be focusing on. Ivano, I love having those conversations with you. Thank you for being the first co-author on my newsletter, The Economy of Algorithms, and thank you for being the first guest on this podcast. That's been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks so much, Marek. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone, and you stay curious.
Stay curious.